All right. Hey, everybody. So this is Josh Bruce, and today we're going to be talking about float tanks. In the spirit of the way that we do things around here, this actually kind of started. I was watching an episode of Good Mythical Morning, and Rhett and Link end up going into somebody has a float tank that you can basically rent for the day. And I had mentioned it to Becca, and I was like, this sounds like it would be a really interesting idea, especially for someone like me. So there's a scene in Daredevil, the one with Ben Affleck or Affleck, depending on where you want to go with that, with Ben Affleck, and basically he goes into this like tomb and just kind of floats inside of this like sarcophagus that's filled with water to kind of block out the sound. Now we can argue about sound traveling better inside of water, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I thought it would be an interesting idea for someone like myself because basically I hear everything, and I can't block out sound. So even if I'm at like a club or a bar or something, like a crowded place that usually has a lot of noise, it's very difficult for me to hear. Even in the Apple store, it's very hard for me to hear the people I'm talking to or talking with. And I was actually really impressed with the AirPods Pro when I tested them out. And the noise cancellation, I was like, holy crap, I can actually hear you. And I also really enjoy meditation and just sort of being quiet and solitude and everything like that. And so she was nice enough to go ahead and buy us both a session for the day. And now I didn't go to the website, but we're going to take a look at it here in a second and then kind of come back. So let's take a look. All right, so this is it. It says Float Horizon. Now, basically, in case you aren't aware, Nashville, Tennessee was hit by a pretty bad series of tornadoes, and they are closed and have to get the roof fixed and things like that, which is just kind of laying it on a little bit thicker with everything that's going on in the world with regard to COVID-19. So anyway, Float Horizon, let's take a look. This is the first time I'm looking at this website. So one of the things that we've got going here is parallax scrolling. So basically, in case you aren't aware, it's it's an effect that basically mimics multiple layers of content, right? So if you've ever stood outside and maybe looked at a row of trees and you kind of lean to one side and the other side and the front doesn't move very much, but the back starts to swing, it's actually more that you're getting a better perception of what's going on. So, and this was a very popular thing. I want to say around 2014 is when it started growing in popularity. But anyway, so you can see 60-minute floats, but the idea is that it's pretty serene, right? We've got this open, nice use of white space, good photography, even though it is, I would assume, stock. Colors are very bright and saturated, right? Like, so very awakening kind of a deal. And I would say that I would be okay if all of this was actually in black or something similar, because I can't click on it. And one of the things that's happening with, thanks to iOS in particular, I think, and then Android, I think, is coming along as well. And then you have Mac OS, like everything is basically, if it's in color, then you go ahead and click on it, but kind of is what it is. And wait. So yeah, no, I can't click on anything except for this last one. And so I think it would do well just being black with the button being the call to action. And then you can look at float therapy. We've got some different links and pages, it looks like, or is it just here? No. So it's actually a whole other page. So then we have again, some kind of overlay with parallax scrolling, the discussion about the tanks. I just want to check to make sure. So this is not what I was in. I was in what she's standing in front of, that door, this right here. And you can notice that it's a vertical pull door. So anyway, Massage therapy, we've got sort of these images that again kind of evoke this notion of meditation, prayer, right? The rock stacks, I can't remember what they're called. And then we actually do have, this is the entryway with the wood slats. I do think these lights, the drop lights that are coming through, was an interesting touch because they're not too bright. I would say that I'd like to see the back and forward buttons not be here if there aren't more than one picture, but there we go. And then apparently they can do Zen parties. They have a newsletter because that's what we need in the world. Basically, more newsletters. But these are actually, these are actually photos from the interior, which is pretty nice to see. It looks like we still do have a powered by Squarespace, which is fine. This is starting to seem like it's a little too much account or a little too much to press on, right? Like there's too much to explore because we kind of also lose the blocking, right? But you know, it kind of is what it is. Sometimes I'm not sure how much of this is them and how much of it is Squarespace, like with regard to themes and everything. I would say that here, generally speaking, you don't want text to go beyond, I think it's like 66 characters. That's roughly where we want to break stuff. And so this is really long and it's centered, which can often lead to losing the line that you're trying to get to. There is a lot of leading though, so the space between the lines. So that's actually pretty helpful in getting you back across. So relax, recharge, recalibrate, and what the experience is. So you know, if you want to, you know, check out Float Horizon or wherever it is. But the big takeaway here is that we're still trying to build out that trust, right? This is not a commodity experience, right? This is not something where people are sort of accustomed to it. They know what to expect and that sort of a deal. So by having this website be sort of a traditional, what's now a traditional website, nice pictures, the parallax scrolling, so on and so forth, having some non-stock imagery as well, you know, it's helping to build up that concept of, you know, this is perfectly normal. This is not as weird as you might think it might be, so on and so forth. So yeah, good times. So let's just hop back real quick. So we showed up and, you know, you basically go up this elevator and you walk in and you're pretty much there. And you go into the right and there's a couch, right? So you're trying to be comfortable, right? Make people comfortable in this experience that might be new to them. And if it's not new to them, make sure that the people who kind of come on a regular basis still feel like it's a special kind of thing, right? And so sat on the couch, there's some books that I could have read, the coffee table, and I'm talking to the lady behind the counter, and she's asking me if I want some tea or anything like that. I'm like, no, I'm good, thanks. And we sort of got to talking about you know, how they came into being and, you know, everything like that. And eventually we go back into the rooms, and you know, there is sort of this curtain that you kind of walk through. Again, just trying to make it open without necessarily being, you know, with there still being a sense of privacy. So walk in, go down the hall. They've got, you know, a few rooms, and I don't know what the pods are. I didn't see any of the pods, but basically you kind of go in and there's a room, and the idea is, and one of the things that she does is she kind of goes through a training for you. So you kind of go back and there's this moment of teaching you how to deal, right? And so you walk in and, you know, she'd let you know, when you actually come in and do your float, you need to take your shoes off and leave them out here. And they've got a good stand there for you to kind of leave paraphernalia that she wouldn't want to take into the float room. And you walk in, and it's this interesting blend of utility and comfort. It actually reminded me of the showers at truck stops when I was living in my car in Atlanta, and basically, you just kind of walk in. It's kind of like flat concrete, very textured ground. There's a little table onto the side, like a little bamboo table. There's a little robe. It's not enough to like go to the floor or anything. It's probably about mid-thigh for most people. And then there's a shower, and she basically says, okay, that's the area in which we were standing. And to her, basically to her right, she's like, and this is the room, this is the tank where you're going to be. And she explained that, it circulates on a regular basis. There's about 800 pounds worth of salt in each one of the tanks. So you're not going to be sinking at all. And, she said, now here's what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead, put in, they have these earplugs that you put in so you don't get water in your ears. I actually really like those earplugs. They weren't push into your earplugs. They're really designed just to seal off the ear canal, but with some space there so that you don't have this weird thing protruding inside of your ear. Then go ahead and get wet, right? So on the shower, get wet and rinse off real quick. Open up the door, go in, and start floating. And what was fascinating to me is that they had music playing. And she said, so basically, as it starts, as you start floating, we're going to be playing this music, and after about 5 minutes, it's going to turn itself off. And I was like, okay, cool. And she said, and if it's a little too loud, usually with the earplugs, it's not, but if it's a little too loud, you can turn the volume down. And what I noticed was really fascinating to me. So the volume knob was sort of this up and down orientation. Like that's the dial shape was this sort of like teardrop kind of a thing. And then she said, if you run into any problems or something like that, there's an intercom system, which was, it's one of those like old school, basically it's like a speaker and a mic, and it's got the big, round button right here. And then next to that, God, what was it? Next to that was the lights. So next to that, and it was a circle with a flush circular button so that you could push it, right? So you could push the lights on and off. And she said, so, you can adjust the music, you can call me, and you can turn the lights on and off. And what I thought was interesting from an experience design perspective is that by touch alone, you can discern what each one is, right? Like you're not going to accidentally, turn up the music because you think you're messing with the lights and vice versa, right? And I'm not going to accidentally call her on the intercom because I'm trying to turn off the lights. And she basically said, okay, usually recommend that you bring, don't touch your face. Irony. So don't touch your face. And so go ahead and get a little face cloth wet and put it on the railing. And then if you need to like scratch your eye or anything like that, go ahead and grab that from underneath and, use that because the salt, is just bad day, basically. I was like, okay, this sounds pretty cool. Again, making me feel very comfortable because she's explaining to me what to expect. She's not just throwing me to the wolves, right? She's taking the time or making the time to explain to me what to expect, what's going to or what I can do if I don't want to have a certain type of experience, right? Like the stinging eyes and everything like that. So she's explaining to me like how that works, and it's very nice. I really appreciated that. And one of the things that I asked her as I was looking sort of at the room and the door and everything like that is I was like, hey, can I record? Like, can I start like a voice memo or something like that and just kind of talk into the voice memo as things kind of occur to me? And she said, yeah, try to keep quiet, and because it feels like a library. And She said, just try to keep it quiet so you're not interrupting, other floaters and things like that. And but yeah, you should be fine. I was like, okay. So Becca and she and Becca went to Becca's room, and I stayed where I was and went outside and took off my shoes and my socks and everything like that. Came back in, put in the earplugs, rinsed off real quick, started the voice memo, and put my phone. So it's like basically the if the tank were to dip down here, there's a little ledge, right? And the door shuts with enough space for me to put my phone right there behind the door. And so I that's exactly what I did. I just put that right there. I went in and I started laying down, and oh, and she had mentioned that like when you have 5 minutes left, there's going to be some like birds chirping, and a different type of sound is going to happen. And I said, okay. And so, I laid down and I just sort of chilled out there for a minute. I turned down the music because I was like, I could still hear it through the earwax stuff. And then I turned off the lights, and it was actually very, very dark when I first turned off the lights. Now, I also have very good night vision, so I'm pretty sensitive to light as well. And so I was just kind of laying there. And I normally don't float in water, but of course you got 800 pounds of salt in there. So I was definitely floating. And what I noticed is like I started floating into the edges, and she had mentioned that like what she likes to do is actually float with her hands over her head. And I had, started that way, but I decided, no, that's not for me. And so I basically just kind of had my hands out to the side like this, and so that as I was hitting the wall, I could kind of bounce off, right? And you don't want to like throw yourself, right? Just kind of like nudge yourself a little bit. That way you can have a lot more time before you hit the other wall. And so lights off, turn the music off, and it was only an hour. So they offer a 90-minute now, but it was only an hour, and it was fascinating to me. So a couple of things. One, after a while, I don't know how long, but after a while, when I would open my eyes, I could actually see different parts of the room, right? And like my eyes had finally adjusted to the very minimal amount of light that was there, and which was fine. And we did talk about it later. And one of the other things, because it was so quiet, I feel like I started breathing heavier, right? Like I needed some type of reassurance that I was still around. I mean, that's really way more woo-woo than I am. But basically, like, even when I played back my recording, that's what ended up happening, right? So I'm like sitting in the room or laying in the water, and I can hear everything that's going on inside of my body. But normally I'm a very quiet breather. And for some reason, I was just like, only it felt like I was breathing normally. It was kind of interesting. And again, when I listened to it, like my breathing was actually louder than my speaking voice when I would say things like, this is what I think I should do here, and this is what we should do there. Just as the ideas kind of hit me. And I would say that was kind of the end of the road, right? Like as far as weird experiences go, until I was almost ready to get out. So I ended up like, after a while of getting really relaxed, I went to lift my head, and it was very heavy, very, very heavy. And I was like, wow, this is going to suck here in a minute. And so just laying there, and all of a sudden, like birds started chirping and everything like that to let me know it was time to get out. And so I kind of rolled over and started lifting myself up, but I was very heavy. And I mean, it's not like I was absorbing water and I gained weight or anything. It's just I was so accustomed to floating at this point. right? At least this is what I'm telling myself anyway. And astronauts talk about having the same sensation when they come back to Earth, where basically their body is too heavy for them to deal, and they've got to like work themselves back up. And so, I basically was just like, okay, let me get up, and I was, like I said, I was heavy. It took me a second to really like be able to lift myself up. And so got up, opened the door, moved my phone over to the little side table, turned on the shower, definitely like sluiced myself off. They had body wash, and I've seen these in some like Airbnbs where it's just like the on the wall there's a shampoo, conditioner, body wash, and you kind of do the plunger thing. And so that was there. I used that to my advantage, and dried off, got dressed, and looked at my phone, and it was covered in salt, just because I'm touching it, right? And yeah, then got out and sat down, and Becca was still in, so waited for her to get out. And while she was there, the woman behind the counter was like, so how'd you like it? It was your first time. What's going on? And I kind of told her the story about what's going on, and she was like, yeah, I find you really have to touch the sides lightly to do that, and to try to center yourself and everything. And I did mention about the lights, and she was like, that's weird. That shouldn't happen, but maybe there's some light pollution from one of the other rooms or something. We'll take a look at it. And yeah, so that was pretty much it. Becca came out, and I was like, so how was it? And I mean, it's not my story to tell, but the woman behind the counter did mention like how when you're in there, if you really do it as a therapeutic construct and start really thinking about certain things, she mentioned something about having a really powerful experience, and I don't mean that in a, again, kind of woo woo kind of way. Not that woo woo is bad necessarily; it's just not my thing, right? But it was something else, but again, not my story to tell. And then we left, and I thought it was nice because at least Float Horizon, they do have a membership program with referrals and that sort of a thing. I don't know if I'll actually put the ID in the link or not that I have, but if you go, I think it's like every 5th referral I get like a free float or something. So with that said, yeah, no, it was a really nice experience. Really considering the other person and where they might be coming from, whether there's somebody who comes to that location all the time, or whether it's somebody who is brand new to the concept of floating. Basically, how can I put this? It's the opposite of a hospital, right? Hospitals have a tendency to be very utilitarian, but they're there to offer care services, some type of care service, but they're very utilitarian. They're not really too concerned if it's your first time, your 5th time, your 100th time, or anything like that. It's it feels like anyway that you should inherently trust us. We're a hospital, right? Whereas with Float Horizon, it was definitely, as a new person walking in, this is how this is making me feel. I could see if I wasn't a new person walking in, how this would still give me some reassurance, and still, feel like I've stepped into a different environment than the one that I just left. So I don't think, floating is as crazy as some people make it out to be. Maybe it was just because it was my first time. I don't know. But yeah, give it a shot, see what happens if you want to. I mean, it was, like I said, it was definitely an interesting experience for me, and the experience design of and bedside manner that was required to really amplify that comfort level was amazing. So anyway, as always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it, and I'll see you around.